the lost treasure of the 1715 fleet. The sun was fierce that day, casting long shadows on the beach where Captain Elias Matthews stood, squinting at the horizon. It was early July 1715, and the blistering heat of the Caribbean had baked the sand beneath his boots. Behind him, the surf pounded the shore, relentless and ever-moving as it had been for centuries. But today, the water held a secret that was not just of gold and riches, but of loss, of desperate survival, and of destiny. The Spanish treasure fleet, laden with unimaginable wealth, had set sail from Havana, Cuba, bound for Spain. The convoy of 12 ships filled with silver, gold, emeralds, and treasures from the New World had been a testament to Spain's power and wealth. The ships, however, had encountered disaster when a violent hurricane swept in from the Atlantic. Captain Matthews, a British privateer turned treasure hunter, had heard the stories for years, how the storm had torn apart the fleet, how the treasure had sunk beneath the waves off the coast of Florida, and how, since then, adventurers, pirates, and fortune-seekers had flocked to these shores, hoping to claim a piece of the fabled treasure. Matthews had spent months searching. He had studied maps, read journals, and spoken to survivors, those few who had clung to life after the storm. Now, standing on this beach, he knew it was only a matter of time before he discovered the wrecks, the sunken ships, and the fortune that had eluded so many before him. "We found it, Captain," shouted his first mate, Daniel. He was a young man, eager and brimming with optimism, but also pragmatic. His call pierced the air, snapping Matthews out of his trance. Matthews turned to see Daniel and the crew gathering near the edge of the jungle. There, a small stretch of wreckage, wooden beams and broken hulls, was half submerged in the waves, barely visible above the tide. "It's one of them," Matthews muttered, though he knew the chance of it being the flagship was slim. The wrecks of the 1715 fleet had scattered across miles of coastline, buried in sand, hidden beneath the currents. But still, the discovery was crucial. It was the first tangible proof they were on the right path. With a sense of urgency, Matthews and his crew raced down the beach toward the wreckage. As they reached it, he could feel the familiar surge of excitement, but also a tinge of caution. The waters here were dangerous, not just because of storms, but because of pirates. The area had become a magnet for those who sought to exploit the riches hidden in the depths. "Prepare the diving gear," Matthews ordered. "We're going down." The men quickly set to work, pulling up their diving helmets and ropes, securing the equipment to ensure their descent would be steady. With the gear secured, Matthews took a final breath and descended into the cold, salt-laden waters. The currents were swift, and the wreck was deeper than he had expected, but his training allowed him to move with purpose. He reached the remains of the ship, its dark timbers now home to barnacles and coral. As Matthews searched the wreck, his hand brushed against something heavy buried beneath the wreckage, an iron chest, its edges worn by years beneath the waves but still intact. His heart leapt. He knew the stories. The treasure was said to be held in chests like this, locked tight with iron and sealed by time. He signaled to his crew. The chest was heavy, but with their combined strength, they managed to haul it to the surface, the weight of it pulling them down into the water. When they finally reached the shore, the chest was opened, its hinges creaking and protesting the strain. Inside, the light caught something beautiful, gold, silver, and emeralds, glinting like stars in the sunlight. The treasure was real. Captain Matthews stood stunned, for the legend was true. It was not just the riches of a lost empire, but the legacy of a storm of death and survival. The 1715 fleet's fate had been sealed by nature's wrath, but here, on this beach, they had unearthed its final testament. But as the crew celebrated, Matthews couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A chill ran through him, and he instinctively turned to the horizon. His heart dropped. In the distance, a ship's silhouette appeared, a pirate ship, unmistakable in its design, and clearly on course to intercept them. "Get the chest to the cove now!" Matthews shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Move fast, lads!" The crew scrambled to carry the treasure inland, but Matthews stayed behind for one last moment, his eyes locked on the approaching pirate ship. He knew the stories. The men who had followed the wrecks for years were ruthless, merciless, and they were closing in. As the men prepared to fight for their treasure, Matthews remembered a Tequesta tribe he had visited before and somehow made friends with the hostile Tequesta Indians. He couldn't send one of his men for help. For sure, the hostile natives wouldn't hesitate to send him to meet his maker. This was a mission he had to handle himself. But what were the men going to think of him abandoning them in the middle of a terrible situation like that? He had to come up with some idea, and fast. Just when he was about to tell the men about their only solution, he heard the bushes rumble behind him. He looked, and to his surprise, there standing before him was the great chief Otokobe's daughter, Pokihan, who once not long ago had fallen in love with him and had been the reason the Tequestas had befriended him. They both embraced like only true love can make two become one, and moments later, Matthews pointed out to Pokihan the pirate ship that was fast approaching. Words were not necessary. Pokihan rushed through the brushes and disappeared into the jungle. Matthews knew they were saved. Once again, love had played the right cards for Matthews, who now assured his frightened crew that everything would be all right.